The Mataram City Tourism Agency has put a high expectation on the upcoming motorcycle Grand Prix MotoGP held in Mandalika International Street Circuit in October 13 to 15. The number of foreign tourists visiting Bali has gradually returned to normal 2 years after the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused the local tourism industry to come to a standstill. And U.S. stocks gained slightly on Friday, but worries in the market continues due to a prediction that the Federal Reserve may raise rates more than previously expected. Hello, I'm Luisa Kusnandar. You are watching Economic Outlook. We bring you the latest update of economy as well as a weekly roundup of global and local stock market. And today we will also discuss the latest trend in the tourism industry in the country's main tourist destination, Bali, with Ibu Gilda Sagrado, executive of Bali Regional Tourism Promotion Agency. So let's start Economic Outlook with business news of the week. The Mataram City Tourism Agency has put a high expectation on the upcoming motorcycle Grand Prix MotoGP held in Mandalika International Street Circuit in Lombok, West Nusa Tenggara in October 13 to 15. Mataram City Tourism Agency head Nisar Deni Cahyadi said in Mataram on Thursday that all 4,000 hotel rooms in Mataram would be fully occupied during the international event. As of today, many hotel rooms have been booked, mostly by state-owned enterprises and event organizer for the upcoming MotoGP in Mandalika. About 65% of MotoGP visitors have booked hotels in Mataram, and some of them have even paid their down payment. The Mataram Hotels Association chairman, Made Adiyasa Kurniawan, has said the 2023 MotoGP will be held from October 13 to 15 at the Mandalika International Street Circuit in Mandalika, about 50 kilometers from Mataram, the capital city of Lombok, West Nusa Tenggara. The West Java administration has estimated that the new Kertajati International Airport in Majalengka, West Java, will serve at least 32,000 passengers per week, following the shifting of flights from Hussein Sastranegara International Airport in West Java's capital city of Bandung to the airport. Assistant of Economy and Development at West Java Regional Secretariat, Muhammad Taufik Budi Santoso, said in Bandung on Thursday that the passenger projection was based on the decision to relocate existing 11 domestic and international flights from Hussein Sastranegara Airport to Kertajati Airport. There will still be one domestic flight to be retained at Hussein Sastranegara Airport that serves a trip to Adi Sucipto International Airport in Yogyakarta. Local airliner Wings Air, part of Lion Air Group, serves the trip using propeller planes. Acting West Java Governor Bey Triadi Mahmudin said in Bandung on Thursday that authorities would need at least 1 year to relocate the Wings Air flight serving a trip to Yogyakarta from Hussein Sastranegara Airport to Kertajati Airport. The government and House of Representatives have agreed to increase state spending by 21 trillion rupiah next year, or equivalent of 1.37 billion US dollar. The increase was made to anticipate the rising global oil price. Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati said in a meeting with House Budget Committee in Jakarta on Thursday that the extra funding would raise the total state spending for 2024 state budget to 3,325 trillion rupiah from 3,304 trillion rupiah. With the rising state spending, the government and House Budget Committee also agreed to increase the state revenue target by 21 trillion rupiah to 2,802 trillion rupiah from 2,781 trillion rupiah previously. Government will add state spending 3.8 trillion rupiah for ministries and institutions, 3.2 trillion rupiah energy subsidy, 10.1 trillion rupiah for compensation of rising fuel and electricity prices, as well as 3.9 trillion for education budget backup, the finance minister said. China and Indonesia discussed potentially extending a multi-billion-dollar Beijing-funded railway project after Chinese Premier Li Qiang rode the bullet train on a trial run on Wednesday. The 142-kilometer high-speed rail line currently connects the capital Jakarta to the city of Bandung, Reuters reported.
The prospect of extending it to Indonesia's second biggest city of Surabaya, more than 700 kilometers across the island of Java, was discussed with Lee, and the premier was supportive, senior Indonesian Minister Luhut Panjaitan told reporters. Lee and Luhut tested the train across a 41-kilometer section of the track from Jakarta to Karawang on its outskirts, according to Emir Monti, spokesperson for KCIC, the consortium building the project. The $7.3 billion flagship project of Indonesian President Joko Widodo, which is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, has faced a range of problems from land procurement issues, delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and ballooning costs. Indonesia has set a target for commercial launch of the Jakarta-Bandung track on October 1st, far behind its original target of 2019.
Let's go to our topic of the week. The number of foreign tourists visiting Bali has gradually returned to normal 2 years after the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused the local tourism industry to come to a standstill. In fact, the number of foreign tourists visiting the island has almost reached the peak level recorded before the pandemic.
The number of foreign tourists to Bali amounted 3.4 million people during January to August period, while the occupancy rate of hotels in the island reached 70% during the same period. The governor of Bali, Iwayan Koster, is even optimistic that the number of the international tourists will reach 5.5 million people this year. This year's target almost reaches the 6.3 million achieved in 2019, just before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the tourism industry in the country in March 2020. During the peak of the pandemic in the middle of 2021, the tourism industry on the resort island almost came to a standstill. During the peak of COVID-19, Australia contributed the highest number of foreign tourist arrival of 1.3 million per year, followed by tourists from China with 1.2 million per year. The tourism in Bali began to show a sign of life following the gradual removal of travel restrictions in Indonesia and some part of the world in March 2022. According to the Bali provincial government's data, during January to August, the number of foreign tourists reached 3.4 million. In addition to increase in the number, there is also a sign of increase in the quality of tourists coming to the island. Meanwhile, the latest data issued by Statistics Indonesia or BPS, the number of foreign tourists visiting Bali reached 2.89 million during the January to July period, an increase of 369% compared to the same period last year. Based on the country of origin, the largest number of foreign tourists to Bali during the January to July period came from Australia with 187,285, followed by India with 49,487 and the United Kingdom with 41,623. The number of Indian tourists to Bali has recorded a remarkable increase in recent months, becoming the second largest after Australian tourists, which have dominated the tourist arrivals on the island for years. The Hindu culture has been one of the main factors that has attracted tourists from India, a Hindu-majority country. The number is expected to continue to increase following intensive promotion efforts by the Bali provincial government. The increasing holy tours from Bali to India has also helped promote Bali as an attractive destination for the Indian tourists. The growth in the number of foreign tourists to Bali in recent months shows that the government's decision to stop in last June the visa-free entry to citizens of 159 countries and territories amid concerns about disruption of public order and potential transmission of diseases to not hinder tourists from visiting Bali. Authorities recently launched a crackdown on visitors found posing naked for photos at sacred sites, driving motorbikes without helmets, and committing crimes. Only nationals of ASEAN countries, Brunei, the Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam now remain exempt from the visa requirement. Intra-ASEAN travel is visa-free, and visitor can stay in Indonesia for up to 30 days with a confirmed return ticket. Meanwhile, the provincial government plans to impose a 150,000 rupiah or similar to $10 tax on tourists entering the Island of Gods beginning next year to preserve its culture. The fee will have to be paid electronically and will apply to foreign tourists entering directly to Bali from abroad or from other parts of Indonesia. The governor is optimistic that the tax will not affect the visits of foreign tourists to the resort island, which has continued to increase since last year.
Bali is pushing for quality tourism to protect the island tourism image, which has in recent months come down hard on misbehaving foreign visitors. Here, our guest this afternoon through Zoom, Ibu Gilda Sagrado, Executive of Bali Regional Tourism Promotion Agency. Ibu Gilda will share her insights regarding the province's new tourism policy and how will this affect the industry. Hello, Ibu Gilda, you here with us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Thanks for being on Economic Outlook, Ibu Gilda. First of foremost, Ibu Gilda, the number of foreign tourists and hotel occupancy rate in the country's most popular tourist destination, Bali, have almost reached the peak levels recorded before the pandemic lately. Ibu Gilda, can you give us a brief overview of the tourism industry in the province at present?
Thank you very much. Yes. We have a really peak season right now, having amounts of arrivals between 15,000 to 20,000 arrivals per day due to the summer seasons or typical season for holidays for our European friends as well as the winter holidays for the Australian friends. So it is right now a very peak season for tourist arrivals for Bali.
To hear Ibu Gilda, and I am really loving your background right there, very Bali. Right now, Ibu Gilda, the Bali government is pushing for quality tourism in a bid to limit the entry of undesirables and attract the ones that tend to spend more as well as behaving better in Bali. Do you think that the behavior of some foreign tourists on the island has been really concerning lately? What's your perspective on this?
Thank you very much for the very good quality question. Well, actually, the way we look at quality tourism is probably quite different in the context of our tourists coming over to the island of Bali. What we meant by quality tourists are those tourists who are interested in learning the culture of the island of the gods, interested in our daily rituals and ceremonies, interested to get to know how is the lifestyle of the Balinese people. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be staying in five-star hotels, or on the reverse, they are not the type of people who would be staying in the various homestays across the islands. So when we look at the word quality tourism, these would be the tourists who are having a quality mindset when they travel, as they get to know the land and the people that they are visiting. Tourism prides itself to be a bridge between cultures, and therefore we feel that the word quality, or the definition of quality tourist, should be those focused on people who are interested in our culture, interested to exchange how we look at life, how we perceive about the descriptive words, the scripting of our life, and how the gratitude we are when we express in each of the flower plates of offerings that we put out all across the island of Bali every day. So when we look at that topic as quality tourism, then we actually, in fact, welcome all types, all levels of income earners, all levels of intellects, all levels of different walks of life of people in every country across the world. Imagine Bali welcomes 180 different citizenships every day. And we are looking at a more and more higher mixture of citizenships. We used to have only limitations of just 160 or 170 different type of nationalities coming into Bali directly. But now we're looking at a very long tail of citizenships, and this includes very different type of areas across the world. I meet visitors from Colombia, as far as Colombia, Mexico, and even South Africa or North Africa, Algeria, and all these makes up a very interesting melting pot when everyone from across the world meets in Bali and exchange culture, talks about their way of life, talks about bridging this international community within a geology of the land of Bali. So when we face very few examples of tourists who do not truly understand or embrace how we do our life, how we how the way the Balinese live, then we come up with ideas. For example, as you mentioned, a lot of our tourists are actually putting on no helmets when they ride on motorcycles. So what the government is now doing is giving, of course, endorsements to companies who would open up um, people to be able to learn the Balinese way of riding motorcycles. You know, we ride on the left side of the road, while our friends from Europe are used to riding on the right side of the road. So this needs a little bit of a getting used to. And therefore, we provide, for example, we're endorsing Skali Scooters Bali, a new company that teaches people how to ride and teaches people how the Balinese culture in riding motorcycles and getting to know people along the road, and really honoring the safe way of riding and being free on a two-wheel and respecting the culture of Bali. So I think that would be my point of topic when we look at how the Balinese government is addressing the issue on some glitches that we see. The communication is not expressed or is not communicated and not followed through, received by our visitors from international countries.
That's right. I mean, like, it's really sad to see all these bad publications about all these tourists misbehaving, not respecting our culture, not respecting the law. And of course, it's really concerning looking at this publication where some tourists would actually pose semi-naked in sacred areas in Bali. And hence, a number of steps have been taken by the local government to promote quality tourism, tourists that respect our culture, such as the rise in the cost for entry visa, as well as the collection of tax on foreign tourists visiting the island. Ibu Gilda, the additional cost may discourage foreign tourists coming into Bali. What is your opinion about this?
Well, let me take it one step back for a while. When we talk about the tourists not understanding the culture of Bali, we should put a mirror and look into ourselves and set whether we are already communicating enough and letting people know about our expectations when they visit. So, like a person welcoming a guest into our own home, we should be communicating to them, well, this is the area where you can have your meals, and this is that area where you can have then your sleeping compounds and your private areas. So I think it is a two-way street in terms of communications. When guests are not or are showing in their actions of not understanding the culture and not understanding or quote unquote the word misbehaving, then we are looking at ourselves and saying, hey, maybe we're not the one that is communicating enough. And therefore, the Balinese government has put together a simple one, a simple visitor's guidebook, if you can call it like that, on what it is. Maybe we should communicate to people and tell them that, within temples, this is what the structure mean, and these are all the things that you are to do within the area of a temple. For example, for a lady who is having her period or menstruation, she's not allowed to enter certain areas of certain structures. Therefore, for a person who does not know this prior, then we would not be able to blame them for not being able or for not following the instructions or understanding the rules, because they would not know the rules in the first place. And we take it up as the government agency, the board, to be communicative. So we put together the simple visitor's guidebook on the do's and don'ts of what to do in Bali. When visiting in Bali, these are the do's and don'ts. Of course, it is a life book. It cannot be restricted to just as it is. It is a life book that people can add on. People can compile for themselves of what are the things they can do, and they better not do when they are visiting the island of Bali. Tracking back to your question about the fees that is going to be implemented. Well, I have been receiving a lot of feedback from a lot of people from across the world. We have quite a good network, very strong network with our partners, tourism professionals from other countries who keep on sending their clients, their customers into Bali, visitors holidaying on the island of Bali. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback about how they feel that such an implementation of added value to a visitor would then gain a certain strength, a certain strata of quality within the tourism itself. So I think we should look at the roots of how this decision, how this policy comes about. And it is rooted in the need for us in Bali to showcase our tourism, our culture in a much more quality aspect of it, in a much stronger light so that these are truly can be accepted by people and can also be respected by people. Put it in a certain structure. And I believe this would be a good way of gaining or getting the feedback of the quality tourists that we really need for the island of the gods, Bali. It is a need of preservation that propels us into a certain action because, when a cup of tea, you put it on and allow more and more water to dilute the cup of tea, then you will not be able to taste the beautiful aromatic jasmine tea that you are meant to gain. Therefore, I think it is a good time frame for us to step back and restructure, recalibrate our culture to bring it up to a certain level so that when the people are attracted to it, that when people are willing to visit, they are then within a certain understanding and respect to the culture that they are immersing themselves in.
Such a good point, Ibu Gilda. Thank you so much for enlightening us that we also need to self-reflect to our own government, that we also need to have better communications with these tourists and also applying the new guidelines to up our tourism level. Thank you so much, Ibu Gilda Sagrado, Executive of Bali Regional Tourism Promotion Agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we move on to our next story. Managing Director of International Monetary Fund IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, has recommended 3 main steps that can be taken by ASEAN state members to enable them to survive the economic challenges, including inflationary pressures and liquidity tightening.
Speaking during the ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, or AIPF, at the Mulia Hotel in Jakarta on Tuesday, September 5, Georgieva said that ASEAN countries were quite affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in terms of their economic growth. ASEAN has also suffered from the interruption of supply chains due to the pandemic and the Ukraine war, which has put more pressure, crisis, and inflation in most advanced economies in emerging markets, including ASEAN member states. The IMF director then recommended 3 steps for ASEAN state members to sustain what she called sound, vibrant growth.
First, loss of potential output.
First, she suggested ASEAN state members to maintain macroeconomic and financial stability to ensure consumers and investors' confidence. Second, Georgieva recommended the ASEAN governments to invest more in education and skills. And lastly, Georgieva suggested ASEAN state members to invest in digital connectivity and a green economy.
Our second photograph will be taken with the ASEAN Way handshake, right hand over the left. In 3, 2, 1.
Let's go to our weekly wrap-up on stocks. U.S. stocks gained slightly on Friday, but worries in the market continued due to a prediction that the Federal Reserve may raise rates more than previously expected. The S&P 500 edged up 0.14% to snap a 3-day losing streak and finish at 4,457. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 75.86 points to close at 34,576. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq Composite picked up a 0.09% gain to settle at 13,761. Analysts have said that the market might get good economic news, but there is a rising expectation of Fed rate increases. Recent economic data, which includes lower than expected jobless claims, triggered rate hike fears. Investors were concerned that the Federal Reserve might have more work ahead. Traders were pricing in greater than 4 in 10 chances of a rate increase in November after an anticipated pause in September, according to CME Group's FedWatch tool. Share prices on the Indonesian stock exchanges ended weaker last week following concerns about the expected increase in U.S. interest rate and a fear of continued slowdown of China's economy. The Jakarta Composite Index dipped 0.43% on Friday to end at 6,924 on Friday. Foreign investors recorded a net selling worth of 1.1 trillion rupiah, or equivalent to 71.5 million US dollars. Analysts pointed out that the growing fear on possible increases of Federal Reserve's rate caused bearish on the stock market. Another major point was China's economy has yet to show improvement, sparking a gloomy global outlook. Meanwhile, the rupiah remained stable at 15,328 per US dollars on Friday, the same level a day prior. However, for the whole week, the rupiah weakened by 0.5% from 15,252 a week prior. Analysts have said that the positive data on U.S. economy, including employment, helped strengthen U.S. dollar. U.S. dollar was also in high demand due to continued weakening in China's economy. And that wraps up our edition of Economic Outlook today. I am Luisa Kusnandar. Have a good day and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.